So today, since it's apparently an apocalyptic blizzard outside, which turned out to be 6 inches, I think I'm going to take apart my HP LP2475w. I got this monitor a very, very long time ago, 2009, I believe, and it has served me very well. 1080p, it's an IPS panel, and it actually has a lot of inputs, such as composite input and stuff like that. So it's fairly high end. I paid like $1,000 for it originally, and it has never failed me. It produces a ton of heat. It uses like 120 watts of power, but it's a very good monitor. I've really liked it. I've recently upgraded to 4K and a G-Sync monitor, so it's a whole new world. But the old monitor is a really good one, and I put it aside because I really couldn't bring myself to get rid of it, and then it kind of fell over and whacked into the corner of a table. So it's a little crunchy now. So I don't know how bad it is. I'm not even going to bother turning it on. Let's just open it up and take a look at what should be an actually well-built monitor with probably good caps in it. Unlike most of the monitor teardowns and repairs, this thing actually worked really well, and I've got a ton of use out of it. This is technically the second monitor I had, because the first one, when I got it, had like a little dark patch, and it never really bothered me. But the warranty was coming to an end. I think it had a 3-year warranty, and I went, maybe I should just send this in, because now it's becoming more and more noticeable, and I better just swap it out. So I call them up, and it's made by HP, but it's an LG panel. So I had to call up HP, and I just said, hey, my monitor's broken, blah 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 blah. Okay, I called at probably 4 p.m. on like a Wednesday. The next day by noon, I had a new monitor. I've never had customer service work that well before. They UPS'd a monitor over immediately. It was brand new. Came with a return label. All I had to do was pop out the monitor, put in the new one, or put the old one into the box, and drop it off with UPS. And I gotta say, I don't know if HP's consumer stuff is that good. Their consumer warranty replacements and stuff, but seeing as this is a higher end kind of prosumer professional monitor, maybe they have a special number that it's different. But man, if their customer service works like that, I tip my hat off to them. This is an IPS panel, and most LCDs are TN panels. The main difference is a TN panel is faster, it's cheaper, and it has less ghosting, where you get a faint after image of something when it's moving across the screen. The trade-off is that they have very poor viewing angles. If you have a monitor where if you turn and move to the side, and it just goes all these wonky colors or starts looking black or messed up, then it's a TN panel. And my laptop at work is definitely a TN panel, because even something as simple as adjusting the height on the seat I'm sitting in causes the monitor to just turn to crap. So yeah, IPS panels have a huge viewing range. They also show a true color depth. The IPS panels can do 8-bit color per channel, meaning 8 bits of red, 8 bits of green. Newer ones I think can do 10 and 12-bit for the HDR stuff. An IPS panel can only do 6-bit. So it's limited to like 250,000 colors instead of 16 million. So what they do is they do all sorts of tricks, such as rapidly flipping between 2 colors in a pixel to simulate a third color, and it's really distracting. I can't stand it. So I always use IPS panels just because I find that distracting, and it's also really nice for photography work because it's showing you actual colors. On the back you can see that there's tons of ports on this thing. We've got a power supply, standard IEC connector, display port, HDMI, 2 DVI ports. These both support analog and digital, composite video and component video in, S-video in, and there's even a USB 2.0 hub with some additional ports on the side. So you just, this plugs into your computer and then you get 6 ports, which isn't bad. And there's also a nice little feature of this little track, which you can tuck a wire under and run it all the way to the top to keep the wires nice and clean for a webcam or something. So if you're just running a webcam straight from the USB port, you can just tuck it in here and it keeps it nice and clean. Now, I don't have the original stand. I don't have any stand for this thing. In fact, I was using it with a wall mount. And this uses a standard Visa wall mount and this nice bracket where you just screw this onto the wall mount and then you can just drop the monitor right onto it and it locks in, and it's very nice. Never had a problem with this thing. And there's a little carrying handle, and oddly enough, on a high-end, somewhat high-end monitor, it doesn't have any screws. It's actually just clipped together. So I'm gonna start prying this thing apart and we'll see what we can do. I stand corrected. You have to remove the 4 screws that hold the bracket on, then you can pry the case off and the whole back comes off, but you do have to take out these 4 screws. And you gotta watch it because there's a ribbon cable here at the back going to the front panel controls. Now, the whole thing is in a very heavy steel shield, which pretty much sets it apart from cheaper monitors right there. So there's 4 screws on the side. I'm just gonna take those off. The only stuff on the front bezel are the controls, which is the power button. This actually has picture-in-picture. Unfortunately, the picture-in-picture is not great on this because it only allows 1 digital signal and 1 analog signal. You can't use HDMI and DisplayPort to do picture-in-picture. You can only do HDMI and, for example, composite video. So you can play a classic Nintendo in picture-in-picture, but nothing else. So yeah, and the rest are all just controls for the input and the menus. And this is all just on a single, very thin PCB with a very, very, very long flex cable. Like most monitors, it consists of 2 boards, power supply and a logic board. This one has some thermal pads sticking to the chassis to help cool the power supply. And the logic board is just stuck in here with some posts, and there's also a small board, a secondary board that just provides the additional USB 2 ports for the side. It's nothing special, just a couple caps on it. So I'm gonna go rinse off these boards because they are just caked in dirt from over the years. There's no fan in this, it just collects dirt from the top due to convection. Somehow it hit 3 years with this strange creature the other day. Moose, happy Moose-iversary. Yeah. You like it here? Well, they're showing his formal side without the spots. Let's take a look at this power supply. It's a pretty beefy power supply for this thing, mostly because this thing doesn't use an LED backlight system. It still uses a cold cathode fluorescent light, so it pulls quite a bit of power. I used to measure around 120 watts just in normal operation. My new monitor uses significantly less at 4K. So, yeah, it'll pay for itself in no time with New York's energy prices. There's 2 large heat sinks, and they've got these angled cuts, and I didn't notice in the case if something interferes with this, but I guess they're cutting them off for a reason. They must it must interfere with some part of the case here. So it's a very high quality power supply. Very nice caps are all Nippon Chemicon and Rubicon. Lots of mains filtering. Nice heat sinks on all the major components like this big the bridge rectifier. And yeah, it's well protected. There's mobs everywhere on this thing, just everywhere. Like I said, lots of filtering and just high quality caps. The little caps are flailing around. They could use some silicone to hold them down. That would have been nice, but Even the larger ones, they kind of wobble a little bit, but you know, it's not bad. It'll survive, and obviously it has. Real clunking main switch, and on the back, really heavy traces. They've removed the solder resist to get the heavier traces here. Tons of spark gaps on this thing. They're just everywhere. I've never seen so many on a power supply, or at least one this size. There's some active components down here, but it looks like they're just MOSFETs. They're all kind of, pins are all linked together. And yeah, I mean, it's, you know, nice separation. They see even where they get a little close with these pins, they cut out part of the board to increase the creepage. They didn't do it here, but oh, that's because there's a cap going across. Anyway, oh, and that's probably an opto isolator. Yep. So that's the feedback from the secondary side, or the primary side, I should say. These are all the spark gaps they've got. The line comes in here from this is the IAC connector here for the mains power. You've got line and neutral, and they've put in these cutouts. And they've put in cutouts on the spark gaps, which I think is a little strange, because isn't the whole point to make it so it can arc over and not fry stuff? I've noticed they've only done the cutouts on the spark gaps that have MOVs on the other side, so there might be a reason for that. Maybe it's to prevent the MOVs from blowing up or something. I'm not sure. But you can see that there's this chassis ground section here, and you've got the line and neutral coming in, and then there's a spark gap on each side, and then there's a MOV on each side, and there's also a whole bunch up here. And again, these ones with the cutout have the MOVs. You can kind of see the blue through it. And yeah, I mean, it's just, they're everywhere. I haven't really seen that many spark gaps on a power supply before. So the main board is pretty densely packed. Now, I had to get pretty violent to get these heat sinks off. They were really attached with this like epoxy stuff. Unfortunately, this one took all the meaningful numbers off of it. All I can tell is it's made by ST, and this seems to be the main controller of some type. This one, the whole chip got rotated when I was ripping it off. You know, again, I'm not too concerned. This monitor's trash, so the whole quad flag pack is rotated. I can't say I've ever seen that happen. And this chip just ripped off. I just ripped it off and had to pry it off the heatsink. This particular one is just the USB 2 controller, the hub. And like I said, this is probably the main one. You've got some memory, looks like just standard like SD RAM. Some flash. This one over here is actually made by ST, and it's a GM69010H, which is a DisplayPort HDMI and component input receiver. So this is handling all of the inputs basically on this monitor. It's taking all the HDMI 1.3. It's an older monitor, so it's 1.3, not 2.0 or anything higher. And the HDCP copy protection, it's handling that. It's handling the DisplayPort 1.1. And yeah, it seems to be a pretty complete chip. I mean, it can handle audio too, but we're not using audio in this because there's no speakers. But yeah, it seems to be doing most of all the inputs on this thing. And it must just be passing all the data over to this control chip to drive the LCD. You know, it's times like this that you really appreciate that HP used some quality caps, because look at all the electrolytics on this thing. These are all Nichicon KY series, or Nippon Chemicon KY series, and we got some Rubicon, I think they're XYG series. Yep. And they are everywhere on this thing. Look at this. You spend $50 on decent caps recapping this thing if they shipped them out with terrible ones. It's just a sea of electrolytics. Now, some of them I'm sure you can get away with. These are going to be tied into each USB port, so you know you wouldn't need to change out those. But still, there are just so many electrolytic caps on this thing. Now, I don't like the fact that they're all wobbling around. Like some of these can wobble quite a bit. So that, you know, just like the power supply, it's not great, but obviously I haven't lost any caps on this thing. This small chip here is simply an HDMI switch. So it's probably switching the HDMI and the DVI connectors, because it looks like it's got differential pairs running to each of them. You can tell this is a half decent monitor by the just sheer amount of diodes and other protection they have on all of the inputs. Look at these, tons of diodes, MELF diodes, and these little SOT23 ones, just on everything, even on all the component inputs. You've got protection diodes, and it looks like there's some filtering there too, some RC filters. Here's a power device with some kind of funky heat sinking. I've always kind of liked this pattern that sometimes is used, where it's little dimples of solder with the resist removed. I always thought they look kind of cool, especially when it's a big pad. It's almost like braille or something. And yeah, we got some more power supply devices around here. This is all feeding into the main mystery chip. This connector hasn't been populated. I don't know if it's for an alternate version or if it's simply for testing. So on the back of the panel, which is all metal and it's also encased in a metal like bezel, we've got the TCON board, which is shielded under some fairly stiff metal. I mean, like, they did not skimp on the metal on this thing. It's a pretty heavy monitor. So this is going to be receiving the LVDS data from the control board and then driving the LCD. And this is probably all filtering and power for the cold cathode backlights, which runs out from here over to this other board, which is thoroughly glued on, so I'm gonna have to fight that. This is the backlight driver that runs along the side of the display, and I think I know what's rattling around inside the case now. I think this panel uses multiple fluorescent tubes running all the way up, because on the back here, I mean, one, you can see that there's all these high voltage drivers, but two, there's contact tabs running all the way up the display. So I think there's a whole bunch of tubes in here, and they're just connecting to ground on the other side somewhere. And yeah, you can see the remnants of the plastic that they wrapped the entire thing in for the high voltage isolation. There's no oh, I was gonna say there's no high voltage warnings on it, and meanwhile I'm staring right at a bunch of them. But yeah, it's just producing the high voltage output for the backlights. There's the specific panel type for those who are interested. It served me very well for many years. I never had a stuck pixel, never had any issues with it, other than the manufacturing defect I originally had with the first one, which was a slight shading in one spot. To get this panel out of the frame must be a pain in the ass if you're actually trying to save the case. See, I'm just bending the bezel, I don't care. But there's all these teeny tiny plastic tabs that pop out and lock the display in. And man, I was trying to pop them out, and they must be designed to go one way. They just do not come off. I don't know if this is actually a component you'd be breaking open. I'm guessing this is actually the whole display module, and that this is actually part of it. I was thinking that it was only this inner part that is the display module that you'd purchase from LG. But I'm thinking this is actually part of it too. So you wouldn't normally be taking this apart, but you know, we want to check out the damage, right? Okay, so I've taken that piece off, and there's a whole bunch of display driver circuitry on this side of the panel. Let's see if I can just, yeah, okay. And oh, I think there's a cable or tape on that side. Well, whatever it is getting cut off. Oh, I think it might just be tape. Alright, there's just some tape on that side. So the whole panel just lifts out. Okay. And oh, I I think I found the source of the impact. Yeesh. Because this is actually a sheet of glass on this side. Wow. Well, that's where the impact... Wow, and it cracked all the way up to this side. And went all the way across. God, that would have been depressing if that was my current monitor. I mean, it still is, kind of. I wanted to give this away to someone because it is a good monitor. So, on the inside here, this plastic frame... Okay, so it looks like it just unhooks. Spin it around. I don't hear any glass in there, so maybe the sound of the rattling was just some plastic and stuff. But I'm waiting for some big shards of glass or something to come flying out of this thing. I don't know if I might just have to break this plastic. I think it's going to take too long to get out. Hang on. Okay, progress. Sort of. Oh, finally. Okay, so now we can take a look at the cool diffusion panels and stuff. So we've got ooh, man, I've never played with these sheets that are this big before. So these all are designed to focus the backlighting and make it a lot more even. So they have all these kind of cool optical properties. Ooh, neat. Yeah, can't say I've ever taken apart a monitor this big before. And there's another one. This is kind of just like a standard diffused piece. And this looks like the plastic. This is going to be a piece that is designed to spread the light from the lights very evenly. They do the initial spreading of it. It's very thick too. These are all U-shaped fluorescent tubes. No wonder this screen was so bright when you turned it up and created a whole lot of heat because the power supply running all this stuff. But that is pretty impressive. I was not expecting that many backlights in this thing. This, of course, explains why the high voltage power supply only has connections on one side of the board. Many of the little retaining plastic pieces are broken. This is probably what I heard rattling around in it. There's all these little pieces of plastic that came out when I opened up the panel. So these are, since they're U-shaped, it explains how the high voltage power supply only had power connections on one side. It wasn't just running ground over to the other side, which you normally wouldn't do with a high voltage power supply. Well, I definitely have mixed feelings over this one. On one hand, it was nice to finally see inside of this monitor that has served me well for so many years. But on the other hand, it's a shame that I had to open it up because it was smashed. I was really hoping to find a home for it, since you know, these caps are probably going to run for another 10 years from the look of it. But oh well, at least I saved someone some electricity costs.